So thank you everyone for joining us for the Joseph Delong AMA as part of the Hack Africa Hackathon in partnership with Web3 Bridge. Joseph is the CTO of Sushi and will be here to answer your questions today. So we'll start off with around 10 minutes of myself asking questions and then hand over to the audience. I just wanted to kind of start off by giving everyone a bit of background about Joseph and kind of your career. So Joseph joined the US Air Force as an electronic warfare technician and was there for 4 years before joining McMurry University and studying maths and computer science. And at that university, you were president of the Association of IT Professionals, which I'm sure we have a lot of presidents of different developer clubs and blockchain clubs in the room today. So hopefully that will be an interesting experience to hear about. Then went on to work for the USAA in financial services, firstly as a software developer for 2 years, and then as a research engineer in their blockchain lab from 2015 to 2018. Then held a few other positions in the tech blockchain space before joining ConsenSys as a senior software engineer, working there for 2 years until the very beginning of this year, where you became the CTO of SushiSwap. So I wanted to kind of focus in on that early part of your journey there, going from firstly the Air Force, then into university, and then into finance. And kind of what was that like, and what made you kind of make that decision to kind of leave the Air Force and go to university?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that's, yeah, I was in the Air Force, and it's not really a great job. It's pretty labor intensive, not really fulfilling. And when I left, it was pretty much an easy decision because we have education benefits from having served in the military. I don't know what worldwide militaries are like, but that's, the US has like Montgomery GI Bill and 9/11 GI Bill that allow you to go to college for basically free. And I had already done quite a bit. I'd done quite a bit of college when I was in the service. And so I just got out and did that and never looked back. It was a great decision in hindsight.
Awesome.
That's actually an interesting time to talk about, because like when I came out of the Air Force, one, like you don't really learn any marketable skills being in the military. I mean, maybe there's like some very like obscure cases where that's true. But in like the general case, that's not really true. And I came out at kind of like the height of the housing crisis, right? And Bitcoin had kind of like just appeared. And it was exciting. And even after like, I remember like hearing about it and then like kind of like hearing about it and hearing about it. It's like kind of like once you hear something like 3 times, you have to kind of look, right? And I think around the 3rd time when I was in college, like I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, because there were novel concepts in the design.
And so obviously you kind of heard about Bitcoin whilst you were in college, and then when you left college and joined the kind of USAA and went after 2 years, joined their blockchain research team in 2015. What was it like being involved in blockchain research at such an early stage in that kind of 2015 to 2018 period?
Yeah, working for a bank and working in blockchain research, like for what it's worth, USAA is one of those banks that's always on the cutting edge in their research facilities, at least. And we were able to make some decent inroads with the bank. Like for instance, like we had them make an investment in Coinbase very early on. Based on that Coinbase investment, we had them like do like our first like API integration with Coinbase. We could like view your balances on Coinbase. But like generally, Fortune 500s don't understand why blockchains exist. They're the reason that blockchains exist, really. And so when you're designing for these sorts of like systems, they kind of like brush over the whole, like we had a bumper call before we started this, but like one of the things that they brush over is like the need for permissionless entry into the blockchain, right? It's not something that they're super concentrated on. Public access to that chain. not something they're super focused on, which are like actually the novel pieces of a chain, like, right, like they don't need to solve for anything civil. They already know who their counterparties are. And so in that same way, like Paxos class consensuses like Paxos and Raft already existed for a long time. The only thing that happened with blockchain was that word was a good word that allowed them to integrate with partners more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously, because that was quite an early time to be involved in blockchain research, do you know what any of the other kind of team members from that blockchain research team are up to these days? Are they still in crypto or?
Hudson Jameson's one of them. The Ethereum Foundation, or just recently left the Ethereum Foundation. Yeah.
Wow.
Very early, he was he was on the same team. Johnny Ray was like, I would say, like tangential to that team, not in the exact same team, but like worked with us very closely. He's ETH2, or well, was an ETH2 core developer with me, and then now he's working on Element Fi, which is like approaching release soon, as I understand. I hope I didn't spill the tea on that, but they're going to release soon. Then who else was there? I mean, the first time it's so funny that Sovereign BTC is coming up, because the first time I interacted with Sovereign was at the bank as well, right? One of our VPs was on the board of directors for Sovereign or whatever. Yeah, so like lots of interesting stuff that happened back then is still going on.
Awesome. And kind of going into the role at Sushi, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had a Getting Hired in DeFi panel where we had Chester, the kind of design lead at Sushi, on. And he had a very interesting story as to how he got his job at Sushi, from kind of just contributing some design work, and then a few community members really liked the design, so made a forum proposal to get him a kind of full-time job in Sushi. So I was wondering, how did the kind of role of CTO at Sushi come about for you?
Yeah, I think they needed one. And I had, you know, at the time, and I had talked to Maki early on in DeFi summer when I was working on some other like side projects. And he asked me to do it, right? And I accepted, kind of like, you know, on the, I accepted, and then they made a governance proposal to hire me, and it went through, and the rest is history.
Wow. So it still had to be approved by governance in order for it to kind of go through.
Yeah, I think we've evolved past that, but yeah, like the very early hires, we were kind of like, what is core team? We're like kind of like establishing what that is.
Yeah.
And so we kind of like put everything through governance, which is a bit hard when you're doing governance. You don't want to put everything through because it's quite fatiguing for the voters, right? Like they have to kind of like stay focused. It's better, like indirect democracies are better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned kind of Maki there, who's an anonymous member of or founder of the Sushi team. And how does having a kind of partly anonymous team affect day-to-day operations?
Well, for most part, we want to be worried that people are going to run away with things. Trust is difficult sometimes, but I mean, like the people who are pertinent and are on our multi-sigs are all doxed, like internally. But like, you know, you do want to put, like, it's just good to put those controls in place anyway, right? Like to kind of like prevent somebody, like let's say somebody has ownership of our GitHub organization, right? Like, and then they just kind of like lock us out, right? What do we do? It's like precautions that you need to take.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see a few kind of questions coming in chat, so we'll make sure to go over to those soon. And if you'd like to ask a live question during the session, be sure to click on the reactions button and raise your hand, and we'll be sure to get around to you then. So just one final one from me before we move on to those audience questions. So the Sushi seems to be innovating and releasing products really, really fast. For example, Kashi, which was just released as an isolated lending platform, as well as Miso as token launchpad, Onsen, Bento Box. It's kind of hard to keep up with. So how internally do you kind of manage all of these different ongoing projects side by side?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, for the most part, we had some communication issues early on when I first joined, that we kind of like got over around the time of our delivery of Kashi. I think Kashi was super formative for the team. We learned like a lot about how to work together and what works and what doesn't. Because Kashi, like the delivery was basically a disaster, right? Like, but it's a fantastic product, and we've kind of like slowly evolved and iterated on that. And so that's one way. It's like really good communication. I think like many of those projects early on had kind of a cell structure where there would be individual developers kind of like working on that, individual like product owners, you know, kind of like all working on that and kind of like checking in. There's no way that you can manage a team of, 20-ish people, right? Like 20-ish developers. It's just not, it's unreasonable for you to kind of be intimate with every single part of that project. And so what's important is the people that you hire have to be extremely self-motivated, because we are in like a decent growth phase. And they have to kind of be independently accountable to themselves. So like my wife, who's an architect, not a software architect, a building architect, right? One of the firms that she worked for was like super resistant to work at home. And they're like, well, I don't know, that they're going to be working when they're at home. It's like, that sounds like you're hiring the wrong people. Like, well, you want to supervise them? Like, why? Why should you, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're hiring those people, your expectation should be about their delivery. And if they, hey, like, you know what, if they could have they're even talking about people having second jobs at home, right? If they can have a second job and still deliver at their regular job, who cares, right? Like, what matters is the product, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the world seems to be kind of catching on to the decentralized and home working theme, but we'll see. I guess we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of years.
There's this anecdote about a guy who's a software developer, and this is I want to say this is like 2011-ish, right? Like he took his job and he outsourced it to developers in China. And like just didn't tell his company, and he just like kind of like was just like sitting around. He's like, he took his money and he paid those developers to do the tasks that he was supposed to do for his job. He like was like totally arbing for the company, and that was that was like punished. But I think that person's brilliant, right? Like,
yeah, definitely. It's like work smart, not hard, I think is a Zuckerberg quote. Someone said it anyway. So yeah, and now we'll hand over to some audience questions. So up first we have Ayadeji, who's the founder of Web3 Bridge, which is an organization in Africa which is helping to train Web2 developers into Web3 developers, get them into the blockchain space, and are partners for Hack Africa. So Ayadeji, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, George. On learning here and sentiment when I share your wife's sentiments, saying people should hire people they can trust to do the job, not need to supervise them to do the job. So, my question is this: like, let me say, as an advisor, how will you advise developers that are just coming to the space about getting their feet strong in the space? Like, what should they look to do? How should they do it? Because the reason I'm asking this question is because we train newbies into the blockchain space, and a number of them are scared of actually taking these jobs, scared of not failing, scared of not making a mistake with the codes. What will your advice be to them? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real concern. We were talking about this in the call before, actually, like how to see success from Web2 developers, bringing them to be Web3 developers, or just any developer, right? And converting them is like, in my opinion, coming from the protocols world, like the person that is becoming a Web3 developer, they have to actually believe in it, right? They have to think and kind of care about the considerations for Web3, right? They have to care about Byzantine fault tolerance. They have to care about trustlessness. They have to care about decentralization. If they don't, then they'll just build like a platform that is, you know, mostly Web 2 with maybe a sprinkle of Web 3 on it. And so I think if you're recruiting people that are developers to be Web 3 developers, the first thing is that they have to care about like the principles of what we're developing here, because there are simpler ways to develop everything that we're doing, right? Blockchain, you know, database, you know, transaction, like a JSON API, right? Like some sort of API endpoint, right? Like there are much simpler ways to do this. And so if they don't care about decentralization, they don't care about, you know, Byzantine fault tolerance, they don't care about like permissionlessness and non-custodial interactions, then they're probably not a great candidate. And then secondarily, you asked about how they get experience building. I'd say build doing anything, right? And there are plenty of projects out there right now that need any help. But like the consideration to take with so let's say Solidity development in particular is that you're going to spend 90% of your time on gas efficiency and permissioning, like security. And the other like 10% of your time, you're actually going to be designing something interesting. And so it is a super esoteric and daunting language and framework to work in. And so they just need to be prepared that time they're going to have to take a majority of their time to kind of like be writing unit tests, doing code reviews, those sorts of things that are not super exciting.
Yeah, thanks. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. And next we'll go to Suleiman, who is also from Web3 Bridge. Suleiman, if you'd like to ask your question.
All right, thank you so much, Brenton. My question is, I'm curious to know if Sushi is going to move to its own blockchain in the future. Are there any plans for Sushi to have its own blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that a bit. I'm not sure that there's a necessity here yet. The one thing that we do need is meta transaction propagation, and a blockchain would be nice for that, but it's not a necessity. We can do a pretty good job of decentralized meta transaction propagation using Flash bots and these private pools. But I think in the end, there will be a decent amount of cross-chain swaps. And for that, we will need a framework, probably not a blockchain, probably some meta transaction framework like Nova on top of Bento Box to allow us to go cross-chain. Yeah, so yeah, it's like, I think we'll probably in the near term rely on the infrastructure that's already there, like the bridges and networks to coordinate cross-chain swaps.
Okay, that's good. That's good. It answers my question.
Thank you.
Awesome. We're going to go to a few questions that people have put in chat now, and then come back to the live questions. So Li Ji has asked, will Sushi implement some of the Uniswap v3 features? And do you see it as a benefit to Sushi that Uniswap went down this route, which makes it harder for the user? Is that a question?
Yeah, It makes it harder for passive LPs, that's for sure. Active LPs like whales and stuff, I don't know that UniV3 is a really bad thing. I think it's designed specifically for professional market makers. I think that we'll have some of their features eventually. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the UniV3 design is interesting in many ways. My one complaint I would say about it is like generally, like people complain about the gas costs. I mean, like it's almost unavoidable right now. But my one complaint is kind of this breaking of standard composition that was out there with LPs. It was such a beautiful design, right? Like fees were accumulated as more LPs into the pool, and then you withdrew, right? There's no kind of like fee accumulation and then harvesting, and it's like continually continuously accumulating, so you didn't have to compound yourself.
Awesome. And kind of sticking on the feature route, what's your favorite new feature that you've built on Sushi?
That one's coming soon, actually. Let me tell you about this. Okay, so there's these like, so Sushi. Let me give some background. Sushi is a naked fork of Uniswap v2, like with some minor changes around like ancillary contracts, not the core contracts. Those are identical, even in name. Like if you go and look at the Sushi like factory, right, or the Uniswap factory, v2 factory is the Sushi swap, v2 factory without any name changes. So one of the features of Uniswap v2 is this thing called time-weighted average. These time-weighted average oracles, right? And they're good, but you need an external contract basically to kind of like do calculations, and then you also need to kind of take the time to have taken a snapshot of that contract. And so as we're building Kashi, we want Kashi, which is our lending platform, to be able to have arbitrary pairs in lending and borrowing. But the problem is that we're using these TWAP oracles from our pools. And those TWAP oracles, as soon as you start there, you need 2 snapshots for it to be an accurate price. And so we have to take one, and then we are like the user experience right now that we had designed was like we just make them wait 5 minutes, and then they have to click it again. So they spend gas, like three different times to do an operation. That's not really great. And so what we decided on is that we are leveraging kind of like some of our knowledge, some of our experience, are working on this, and of course, like using some implementation that's already made out there. Like we're making one that takes storage proofs, which are from the chain, right? So like you have your header, right? And those, like you have your block root, and understand you have like your storage proofs, you have your log blooms, or sorry, your log proofs and your transaction proof tree, right? On chain, you're able to access up to 256 blocks in the past. So instead of doing the user experience where we were hitting, the TWAP oracle and then waiting some time and then hitting the TWAP oracle again, what we're doing is we're presenting a proof for a price accumulation storage proof that has occurred in the past. And then we are bringing the current price of the price accumulation. And then we're combining those two and giving so the user is basically, for the user, they don't know anything, right? They come up and they go, I want to take a snapshot of the TWAP. Well, we can take snapshots of TWAP in the past and currently. And so instead of doing kind of like this weird interaction, we've kind of like simplified this into a single transaction. So now you just come up and you're kind of like, you want to create an arbitrary pair, which means that any pair that any pair that you can trade on Uniswap, or Sushi, any arbitrary pair that you can trade there, you will you have access to those in a lending market as well. And this TWAP Oracle design that we've kind of forked and re-implemented will assist you in that. And that's like a really esoteric feature, but it's going to be so freaking cool. You just don't know yet.
Awesome. And so now we're going to go back to some of the live questions. So next we've got Norbert, who is the president of the Knust Blockchain Association.
Hi guys. Yes, as George said, my name is Norbert. I'm the president of Knust Blockchain Hub here in Ghana, West Africa. And my question for today is that we can see that layer 2 solution projects are a hot paradigm shift in the blockchain and Ethereum space. Does Sushi have plans to move on to any layer 2 like Arbitrum or ZKS? And I've also noticed a layer 2 platform, Metis, which is quite good. I checked their technical product and it's very good. Does Sushi have plans to move on to any layer 2 projects?
Yeah, we're already on L2. We're on Arbitrum. If you have they're still currently in their beta phase, their guarded launch phase. If you have a whitelisted address, you can access Sushi already.
Okay.
From there.
Okay, cool.
We're planning on going everywhere. That's part of our multi-chain strategy, right? People ask us and we deploy. Will we deploy incentives on those platforms is kind of a different question. It depends on the platform and where we want to focus. But yeah, we are going to go everywhere that is humanly possible and make it simple for the user too.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Norbert. And next we'll go on to Alendu.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, good evening. I'm Alendu Ifani from the Web3 Bridge community. So I would like to know from someone willing to go far in the blockchain space, what would you advise for them? What qualities should they always seek out for? And what should be their mindset for them to go far in the blockchain space?
Self-motivation. Self-motivation with regard to your work ethic. I think that's really important. There's kind of these traditional jobs where you will have somebody telling you something about what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to be. We're too early in phase for that to even be useful. The secondary thing that I would say is you might have to wind up working for an organization that's not traditionally structured, right? Sushi doesn't have offices. All of our organization happens, through Telegram, Gmail, Discord, and it's kind of a bit of free association there. Reading goes a long way. There are a lot of white papers out there describing every single thing that you could ever want to learn about the chain or development or the designs, right? It depends where you want to go. If you want to learn protocols, there's some really great white papers out there, right? If you want to go into decentralized finance, in particular, just because we're focused on that right now, I would say the runtime verification white paper of Uniswap v1 is a great paper to read. What else is a great paper? Oh, one, Dan Robinson, shout out, yield space paper. That's a really good paper to read. I'm trying to think what else is there. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Those are like great reading, like adaptive lifestyle.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And next we'll go to Fraser Scott, who is the president of the Edinburgh FinTech Society up in Scotland. Well, he's in Portugal at the moment. So.
Yeah, I'm just in my blockchain co-working space. Hi. I was just wondering, we kind of touched earlier on, like, you guys have quite an interesting governance model where it's kind of like community run, they kind of help make a lot of decisions. And I was just wondering, has there been any kind of major proposals that they've come up with that were kind of totally out of the blue and you guys never would have thought of? And has it made your life a lot easier, like having the community so involved?
So it's 50-50, right? Sometimes they'll come up with a proposal out of the blue that makes my life a nightmare. Like for one, I'll say is like SIMP 2, right? This is the sushi improvement proposal number 2, which is the vesting schedule. It was saying that essentially all the sushi that was occurring at that time would be 1/3 dropped now and 2/3 dropped later. Well, like we could very easily implement that on chain as a contract, right? Kind of like you do your thing, it locks up the sushi, you get it like, you know, there's like some sort of like time lock, boom, gets released later. Well, that wasn't done. So it was kind of like a, with the design, it was kind of like they took 1/3 of the alloc points and put them this way, and then 2/3 of the alloc points and put them this other way. And then like kind of that's stored up the sushi, and then we're supposed to do like a drop now. That's a bit of a nightmare. Nightmare in development, nightmare politically, you know, like what, like, yeah. And so, but like in other instances, you know, like with regard to like treasury management, like those have just like popped up and are really useful. Yeah, I think it's like, it depends on the day, but like for the most part, it's like a huge net benefit.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I can imagine hopefully in like the long term, it will pay itself off.
Totally.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Fraser. And next we're going to go to Jake, who is the president of, or co-president of the Leeds University Blockchain Society.
Hello, Joseph.
Hey, Jake.
If you took yourself back and you were a student competing in the Hack Africa hackathon, what would you be building to like improve like blockchain in Africa? Like
actually, yeah, there was this paradigm. Hang on, let me find this real fast. Everlasting options right up. I would be building this right here. I'll send this in the chat. That options platform, that design is really amazing, and I would be building something like that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
It's Dave White and SBF like article for Paradigm.
Very nice. So that's your challenge for the next hackathon, Jake.
Yeah, do it.
So yeah, if anyone else has any more questions they'd like to ask live, be sure to raise your hand. We've still got a few more to get through from chat though. So we have one from Jackson Stamper, who's part of the Omaha Blockchain Association, who's asked, where does SushiSwap want to be a year from now?
I want Sushi to be usable for everyone and give access to everyone. The kind of like financial products that at one point were only reserved for a special class.
Very nice. And Kieran's asked, what's your favorite type of sushi?
I guess salmon, sashimi, yeah.
Do you end up eating sushi often, or do you get a bit sick of it from work?
Yeah, it gets sprung on me all the time. I mean, I like sushi, but it's not like it's not my go-to. More of a steak kind of guy.
Awesome. And what do you think of Float Protocol? I heard they work with Sushi.
Yes.
You know them? They are one of.
I am like, I'm not involved in those discussions,
Okay.
so I don't know. Sorry.
Awesome. Just for those that don't know, Encode was I think third place in one of our recent hackathons as an algorithmic stable coin. And
Okay.
Stevie's asked.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's ringing more familiar. I'm sorry. I don't really know. Sorry, I'm not involved in that part.
No worries. And Stevie's asked, what is your favorite thing about working for Sushi?
I like, this is going to sound like totally spoiled, but there are literally like next to zero implementation problems that can't be solved with money, right? And like many times, you know, I've spent my whole career as a developer. I've seen kind of like misallocation of funds for software development, and I really like the kind of the grand architecture aspect of being able to have an idea about something and want something built in a particular way, and or enhanced, right? Like, and having access to the funds that will allow us to build things. For instance, like I just talked to ChainSafe, and they're maintaining the Web3 library, Web3.js, and you know, that library is a core piece of infrastructure, right? But nobody's funding it, right? I would love to add funding to that to enhance it. I mean, it's a mess, you know, like no offense, guys, ChainSafe, you guys are doing a great job. They just got handed it like a few months ago, but like Web3.js is a mess. And like, and there are other like infrastructure pieces that are a mess that would be, if they were enhanced and improved, they would be a huge net benefit for the community. And so that's like my favorite part, is being able to kind of like contribute for things that are like public goods and not really necessarily having always a direct profit motive.
Fantastic. So we also have a question, is Sushi hiring? Or maybe to phrase that slightly differently, what would kind of you look for when you're hiring a dev for the Sushi team?
For a Solidity developer, it would have to be, you know, a GitHub that is healthy, that has lots of Solidity in it. You have written contracts that have held some amount of money for some time, like without, you know, an attack, or without a successful attack, or, you know, like something that you learn from it maybe. Experience is really hard to get in the Web3 space, or in the Solidity space, because like the real experience that you need to do it requires you to kind of already be good at it. So like you're gonna, like, people who are senior developers think that they'll come in and be a senior Solidity developer. Not true. Almost never true, right? Because a good Solidity developer is not like a regular good developer. It is a very specific skill set. And so you have to spend a lot of time writing code that might get thrown out, or writing code that will get go to code review and get ripped up pretty bad. Yeah, those are some things that, like, for a Solidity developer, front end developer, you know, Web3 experience, right? Using like Web3.js, Ethers.js, working on some other project. We are kind of like keeping our core team very narrow on purpose, and doing, like, we will generally, what we'll do is we will contract work for like small, you know, bite-sized issues, and then evaluate performance over time. And then if we think that it's a super high performer, we'll bring them onto core team.
Fantastic. And just cautious of time, we've only got a few minutes left, so be sure to put any final questions you have in the chat for Joseph. And Danny, I believe, has put in a couple of the links to the papers that you mentioned as well, Joseph.
I really appreciate that, by the way. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Danny. And we'll be sure to include those in the post-event write-up on Medium as well. And just a kind of question on my side as well, from following your Twitter, I've seen that you're very, very into your NFTs. I was wondering, what excites you about the future of NFTs beyond art?
Yeah. I mean, art is a really big one, right? Can you imagine, like, imagine that, like, until now, that, like, like let's say until like Bitcoin was invented, that we were doing banking on, you know, pieces of paper, because that's not true, right? We were doing electronic banking worldwide, basically by the time Bitcoin was invented. But art is one of these things that has continually been done on paper, right? It's like I have to produce a medium for somebody to just for somebody to purchase it. Like then the people who were doing digital art in that time were called like graphic artists, and it's kind of like a kind of an hourly job. I'm excited by the idea that digital artists are able to create and sell works without the necessity of an intermediary and without the necessity of a physical medium like a canvas or a piece of paper. I like that. But like NFTs are exciting in other ways. I think debt obligations are going to be a huge one. Yeah, like it's, you know, anything that needs a unique representation, and you want kind of like transferability, NFTs are good for that use case.
Awesome. And then, so just to end on this question, given the theme of the hackathon being Hack Africa, how much impact can blockchain and more particularly DeFi have on Africa, do you believe?
Oh man, you know what? I don't know if the audience knows this, but like the financial system is fucked, right? Like from top to bottom, it's not fair to anyone. The design of the financial system is designed in such an abusive way that allows kind of the essentially like whale friendly, and the design of blockchains long term, including like L2s and stuff. I understand right now that it's like really expensive to transact on, and we hate that as well. But long term, the empowerment that's going to come from blockchain, you're going to get access to the same tools that these people have been using, and you're already seeing what's happening, like with Robinhood, and kind of like short squeezing these whales, like having access to those kind of like financial those financial tools is going to be so crazy empowering. Like I'll just use an example of the United States, right? We have a terrible banking system, believe it or not. One thing is just like there's essentially no yield for depositing in a bank account. It's like two bips, something like that, for most banks. And wouldn't it be great if wouldn't it be great if you could get yield on your money? Like why shouldn't you, right? Like why do I have to put my money into a bank? Like I can put my money in, like if we're ignoring smart contract risk, right? I can put my money into some things on chain that would give me, 10 to 20% yield, in some cases more. So like people are going to get access to these like just really powerful financial products, and I really see that as being enabling for everybody worldwide.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. But yeah, I think that will do us for today's event. Thank you very much, Joseph, for giving us your time and your insights today. As I mentioned at the start, this event will be kind of put on our YouTube, and we'll publish a Medium article with some of the links that Joseph mentioned, as well as a kind of transcript. So thank you everyone for attending. Just as a reminder, this has been part of the Hack Africa Hackathon. I believe Danny's put a link to the article where you can read all about Sushi's challenges for the hackathon and the associated prizes. So if you wanted to build something associated to Sushi, be sure to check that article out as well.
Can I just say, anybody who's out there who's building something that's kind of like pre-token, pre-investment, and you think that it's interesting and it would appeal to us, just slide into our DMs, mine or Rachel Chu's DMs, and let's talk, because we want to start getting into this incubation game. And I'm really grateful for y'all having me on. The questions were so thoughtful. I'm like really shocked we didn't have like why number go down questions. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the invitation.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. I've just popped your Twitter in chat as well, so people can enjoy the content and send you a DM if they are building something cool.
Right on.
But yeah, thanks everyone. I hope you have a great evening or the rest of your day wherever you are, and see you on the next one.
Bye.